Great. Well, let's see if we can get started. It's almost 5 after. And so I'll start with tonight's first introductions. And if Ed Darlington is there, would you like to do the introductions, Ed, or would you like me to?
Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, so our president is Ed Darlington. Our program chair, first vice president, is Christy Sanderson. Our librarian is Cecil Sweeney, second vice president. Our honey plants, third vice president is Chad Gilliland. Our secretary is Janet Campbell. I'm the treasurer. We have Jolie Weiner on. She's our scholarship chairperson. Our editor is Cheryl Burkhead. Special events coordinator, Becky Tipton, and also a special events coordinator, Joe Patrick. And we have our guest star out from Western Kansas, Jim Kelly. I saw his name pop up there for a minute too. So we'll try to answer your questions. Just to get started, it's swarm season. So probably out there catching swarms or hearing about them or seeing about them on Facebook. So this was April's temperature outlook. The pattern for May it's changed a little bit, but for early May, this was the jet stream pattern, but it's supposed to take a dip and we're supposed to be in the 60s for the next week. Our first question came fairly early in the month, and that was from Krista Clemmy, and she wrote, I'm going to try my hand at getting some comb honey this year. I already have the waxed sheets that are several years old. Is there a shelf life on the waxed foundations? Jolie, what do you say?
I say if you haven't stored them near any chemicals, they're probably good to use.
And so as a promo, we're having a value added workshop the middle of the month. I believe it's on the 15th.
On the third Thursday, whatever that is.
Yeah, let's see here. The third Thursday of May is, actually looks like it's the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's also the program, I think, for the NECPA regular meeting is the
Monday meeting is on the 17th.
And that's also on combed honey and something else, but combed honey was part of it.
So great.
Combed honey and supering. If Christy's not on, that's what the program is.
So be sure to tune in for that.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of her question was, I assume the waxed frame should be placed in the center of the supers?
Yes, and I would write in black magic marker that is permanent, write comb on the top so you do not take it out and extract it. And don't ask me how I know that.
So to continue with that, she says, any cons to putting chunk honey in glass canning jars with honey?
The only con is it crystallizes pretty fast. So what we do is I cut the chunks, I put the chunks in the jars, we put the lids on, and then we stick them in the freezer. And then when we're ready to sell them, then we put honey in them and sell them. But yeah, it's a really good way. Or you could put your chunks in, put your liquid honey in, and then stick them in the freezer. But for some reason in those jars, it just seems to crystallize a whole lot faster. So I don't know.
Well, I know last year's honey, somebody over on the Missouri side had it measured, and it was like 77% glucose, which is awfully high, and that's what will cause it to crystallize a lot quicker. And it really did crystallize a lot quicker.
It did.
Fourth part of that is any other useful tips to ensure a successful comb honey harvest? That
We
you
need
can
a
think
good
of.
honey flow. That's all I can think of.
Yeah, we need a good, strong honey flow. Thank
Is
you.
anyone seeing clover? We're not seeing white Dutch up here yet, and not really seeing much.
We just started noticing it here in
okay.
Franklin County today. Just
Oh,
some
good.
little one or two, not a lot, but
Okay.
just
I guess
started
it's
moving.
coming. This
Yeah,
is
no.
just the 1st of May, so yeah.
I just noticed some of it yesterday too when I was out and about. So
My 6 acres I planted is just coming up.
Oh, good.
great. Well, those are all the questions that I had received in time. I was out checking hives today and moving things around and doing divides and placing queens, and just got home in time. So I don't know if I missed any emails that might have come late. We did send the invitation out a little differently this time through MailChimp. So that's how everybody got notified. And Cheryl says I upone her. And so now she's going to start sending the newsletter out by that too.
It looked really good, Robert.
Well, thanks. Well, now it'll be up to Cheryl.
So back to your question on clover. Now, last fall, I planted a crop called crimson clover.
Mm-hmm.
That's up and it's been blooming like crazy. I've got bumblebees and honeybees all over it.
Yeah.
Did you broadcast it or did you sow it into the ground?
I broadcast it.
Okay.
So if there's anybody else that has any questions, be sure and put it in the chat, or you can speak up, unmute yourself and join in. There are a few people that are unmuted, and I think that's fine. Okay, as long as we don't get any background noise. But
Robert, I received a question that I guess you or Jolie one could expound on. That came to me personally in the chat box, so I'm gonna just speak up here. And they're asking about the third Thursday value added for Kansas honey producers, and so we kind of touched on that. And the next topic is comb honey, but maybe refresh everybody as to how they need to register for that and how they can get the information, where they can get the information. That would be great.
Hi, Becky. That was actually from me. My question is, I actually ironically have a commitment every third Thursday. And so I'm wondering if there is another way to view it or if you can only view it live.
That's a great question. I think it's being recorded, Jolie, isn't it?
yes.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, it was, but we haven't gotten it posted yet, but we are recording them.
Wonderful.
So,
but you will have to be registered. You have to go ahead and register. So
You have to register for each Thursday course, or if you're registered
actually,
for the...
if you register for one, then you'll still get the link by email from Zoom. We'll tell it like a week before to do it. And then the link will be in the NECBA newsletter. And so this is a membership drive for the Kansas honey producers, and it's $15 a year. And while it's free to people, we're hoping that they will join the Kansas honey producers. So that being said, you don't have to be a member, but
I did join, so thank you very much.
Good. All right.
So
yeah, I just wrote a thing for the buzzer, and it does have the link if you haven't already signed up for it. So
yeah, if you go to kansashoneyproducers.org and look under archives, there is a link out there for that one already that we had last month.
good.
And I put a link in the chat box, so if you want to grab it from there for the time being. Okay, I guess I will go with some of the questions that's in the chat box probably. So let me try to start up to the top to make sure I haven't missed any. So someone wrote on there, I've been out weeding my new pollinator garden and I can't tell the flowers from the bad weeds. What to do? I've Googled with some pictures, other ideas. I need a good gardening mentor. Anybody like to take that one? I don't know. What's bad? What are bad weeds?
Well, like I know I have like some stuff like, well, like I Googled some. I didn't even know they were friggin' dandelions. I thought maybe they were something. So when stuff's coming up, it's like I'm not even sure. I don't know. But I have like bed straw. I know that's a weed. I know now that I have a bunch of hen bitten stuff, and now that it's quit blooming, I've pulled it up. But honestly, like 90% of what I planted last year has come back, but there's some stuff I'm leaving that I'm not sure I should.
Well, I think I counted on our road, and I'm only one of 2 houses that have a yard full of dandelions. Let's see, Daniel Cleanly had a question. He wants to know what a flow hive is. I think Marcia and Steve Harmon, are you there? Would you like to answer?
We're here.
Great.
It is only supposedly an easier way to harvest your honey. It does not help you whatsoever in figure out how to keep bees. You need to be in the club and have all your questions answered with people that are in the club. It's the only way to harvest your honey.
Thank you.
Yeah, I looked at Flow Hive a couple of years ago, and the concept is intriguing, but like I say, they emphasize all you got to do is turn this valve and you get this honey. And so the advantage is, in theory, that you can get different flavors and varieties because you don't have to harvest all your frames at the same time. But there are so many issues with it, and it's so expensive. That is the last thing people need to be going to. So it's not something I don't think any of us recommend.
It's actually just intriguing for a backyard beekeeper, which is what we are. We only have 2 hives. Now we have 3, maybe. So it's easy for us to deal with it. But for anybody that's got any kind of quantity, no, it is not the thing to do. It's crazy. You still need all the regular lang strip stuff, but it's 8 frame. So if you're already running 10 frames, you're going to have mixed equipment, and that ends up obviously being an issue, and you have more stuff than you need.
Thank you. Veronica Sellers has a question on oxalic acid drip mite treatment that she already performed. She said they did on the 8th day after they released their queen in 2 packages that they have recently hived. This was about 2 weeks ago. At our inspection this weekend, everything is looking good, with the queens laying eggs and larvae and brood into all stages. When should we consider doing a first sugar roll to determine our mite load, is their first question. They're thinking they should wait until the new bees are hatching and the hive population grows more. They also want to make sure they don't hold off too long. So Becky, are anybody doing oxalic acid drip on new bees that might be able to contribute to answering?
I'm not. I don't have any new packages, and that really only works on bees without a lot of brood. It's a very time sensitive thing to do, and good job getting it done. As far as checking your bees with a sugar roll, I think most of the people that I've heard recently are suggesting we do it about once a month. When in doubt, you can do that, and you're not going to damage your bees. You don't want the queen, but you aren't really going to damage your bees with a sugar roll. And if you practice more, you'll get better at it, and you will be able to kind of keep long-term records of that. I think it's a good practice for new beekeepers to do that. I don't see any downside. Not treating them, but just testing a little more regularly is, I think it's a good idea. I think it's has a lot of merit. So when you have your all summer long worth of data, you can look back and you go, look, they're in July. That's when it happened, and you'll know. So anyway, that's my thought, but you know, go for it.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. New question. Looks like Matthew Brandis found a bumblebee in his hive today between the inner and outer cover. It must have been dead. First time I've seen that. Is that common?
It was not dead.
It was not dead. Wow. I see them every once in a while, but they're usually dead because they've gotten trapped in there, or they're at the entrance and they try to get in. But anybody else have
I
issues?
don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah.
Would it have gone up through the entrance and all the way to the top, or do you think it maybe snuck in like a ventilation hole? I mean, it's a big bumblebee. I
Yeah.
don't know.
It might have snuck in and gotten trapped and crawled its way up to the top, and yeah,
Okay, I was just curious if that was a common occurrence. First time I've seen that.
usually not. Sometimes I'll see a dead one, but that's, it's happened. I think they're attracted to the smell of ripening nectar or something. Alicia Hamilton has asked, how many days until you add your first honey supers, or are you your first round of supers on now? Sorry.
Yeah. Kennst du den?
So let me mute that real quick. Okay. Technically, I'll go first. Anybody else want to chime in, please do. But in normal years, I would have been adding supers like about 2 weeks ago. And I'm adding supers today, first round. I think for me, the signal is when the Asian honeysuckle bushes start blooming. Even I don't see the bees really work it, but somehow there's something else out there, like the black locust is coming on now. I've seen a few black locust trees blooming the last couple of days. And for me, I would have had them on a little bit earlier, but this year is off. Anybody else? Jim Kelly, are you adding supers already?
We are still out here in the cold. The high was 58 today.
Let me call you back. I'm in a bee meeting.
Oh, somebody's calling.
Sorry.
So we checked with several alfalfa producers out here today, actually. They all expect that the first bloom will be sometime in the last week of May, or maybe even the first week of June if the weather doesn't come up. So no, we're just trying to maintain our bees waiting right now.
Okay. Well, that's out in central Kansas. I wouldn't say western, but it's kind of western once you get past Topeka.
Stuart Dietz posted that he was putting a bunch of supers on, but I don't know. Our bees, well, we've split pretty heavy this year, but I don't feel like ours are quite ready yet.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not, some aren't ready, some are just getting ready. So, but I've got to do my distribution part. So now, depends on how many bees you've got. You need about 40,000 for start the honey flow. So if they're in both brood boxes and they're looking pretty populous, you can start putting them on. I like to try to get ready for the black locust trees. So
We have several supers on, and we just were looking at the black locust in our area today, and they're starting to bloom. Some of the
Yeah.
trees are.
Indian Hills Road.
Okay.
I noticed I started adding supers today as well, but mostly because I feel like the brood nest was being backfilled with nectar. I mean, my frames were full of nectar.
Yeah.
Because that was going to be a question, and since we're talking about it, I mean, is it okay to shake that stuff out, shake it out to kind of open up, Jolie? I saw your face, Jolie. I mean, if it's in the brood nest and there's like no place for the queen to lay, is it okay to just maybe bang a few of the frames and knock the nectar? I mean, I guess bang it into the hive so it
Do
doesn't go
you
in the
know
ground.
how hard they work to get that nectar in there? They'll move it around.
Yeah.
If you got supers on, they'll move it.
Okay.
I mean,
Do you have
yeah.
it? Do you have any drawn comb that you can put in?
Yes, I do. And
Okay.
I've started putting some on today.
Yeah, I take some of the stuff that's filled with nectar and take it out and put it in with drawn comb.
Okay. But yeah, all of my hives were just full of nectar. So that's why I asked Jolie, don't roll your eyes at me.
I'm not rolling your eyes at you. I'm just like, what? I need to watch my facial expressions, I guess. Anyway.
Yeah, no, Matt, if you put empty supers on, that gives them room to move it up. And if they're ready to start, if you've got a good population, they'll go through the excluder and start moving it up.
Okay.
And start dehumidifying it. That's a really good way for them to start dehumidifying it.
Yeah.
You were muted, Jolie. Can you say that again? Or you were muffled?
Oh, it's a really good way for them to start dehumidifying it when they start moving it, and they'll spread it out thinner and stuff.
Okay.
So.
And it was all my bees last night that I checked in the backyard, they were fanning into the evening because it was such a warm day. So they're bringing in something to draw it out, draw the moisture down. So that's just my observation. Couple other questions here from, looks like the Morgans. When purchasing a nuke from someone out of town, what are some good questions, things to check for when you go to pick it up? Is Chad Gilliland on?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Would you like to answer that question about when purchasing a nuke from someone out of town? What are some good questions or things to check for when you go to pick it up?
Well, each nuke dealer is a little different. You know, you should always ask the question of, do I need to bring a box? Because sometimes nuke dealers will transfer frames from one box to another. It's not something that I would recommend because you end up losing a percentage of your workforce as they leave when you open up. Sometimes some nuke dealers will have a frame transfer where you bring 5 frames for the 5 frames that are in the nuke, but you know that's kind of hit and miss. Most of the time, you just want to find out what style of box they're in and how easy is it to close, because we get a lot of questions. Can I carry them in my car? Do I have to put them in my trunk? Do I bring a truck with a camper shell? What do I do to make sure that I can get them home safe? And each and every time, we mention, with the style of box, depending on, how the openings open and close, the nuke dealer should always have, the common sense to, if you have some anxiety, to, tape the door shut, because some varieties will vibrate open as you're transferring them. So you just want to make sure that that's not a problem. Many times, at least for myself, I always give a 30-minute time frame for each new customer that picks them up to ask questions. You want to educate them on the fact that the 5 frames from the nuke come out and are placed into your 10 frame box in the exact same order. So you're not breaking up the brood pattern, and you're positioning those in the middle of the box. So you're taking out 5 empty frames and putting the nuke frames in order as they came out of the nuke box. And many times the customer should ask, are the outside frames full of nectar and pollen? Because sometimes they're not. And if they're not, they need to be educated that they'll need to feed the bees. But, a good quality nukes dealer will ensure that, all 5 frames are, full of bees, and the 2 outside frames got your nectar and pollen resources to ensure that that colony is going to be able to survive. And we always say, when you get your nuke home, go ahead and put it in your 10 frame equipment as soon as possible, because so many times those nukes are popping at the seams, and you don't want to encourage any amount of swarm tendencies with your nuke. So putting them in that 10 frame box will make that less of an encouragement. And then always inspect those frames going in, make sure you don't have any swarm cells on the bottoms of the frames, because that 5 frame nuke box is definitely tight, and if the bees are busting at the seams, there's always that chance. So
the other question I would always ask is, has the nuke been treated for varroa mites? If so,
that's a good, yep.
If so, how, and also when?
Yeah, that's an excellent addition. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I should have mentioned that immediately, because that's very important, especially not knowing where your nukes are originating from. So they might be coming from a warmer climate where the varroa mite population may have already started to kick in, versus maybe locally raised and overwintered nukes here in our own backyard. So that's definitely important. So that'd be critical, because you want to make sure that you don't start off with a concern that's only going to get worse as the season progresses.
I would also ask, is the queen going to be in a cage or without laying? I can't believe how many people we've heard have picked up nukes, and the queen hasn't ever even been released into the hive yet.
Oh my.
And I mean, that's the whole point of getting a nuke, is you're getting a laying queen that has been proven to be a laying queen. That's the whole deal.
Yeah, you're supposed to have that queen's supposed to be loose and running around already, laying eggs and everything. That's the whole point of a nuke.
Yeah, that sounds like an uneducated nuke builder that really didn't know what they were doing in the first place.
Exactly. So that would be a big one to ask.
I always like to ask too, or inform the customer, what are the genetics of your queen? Are they Italian? Do they have varroa sensitive characteristics? Are they Carnolians? That's very important, because that kind of helps you to gauge, okay, if they're Italians, I know they're going to have a quick buildup in the spring, and they're going to carry over a larger population through the winter, versus Carnolians. So I think that's an important thing to, ask, because that just helps to educate you to know what to expect from your bees.
What about equipment questions as far as like age of frames? Is there value in asking?
There's definitely value, but when you open up that nuke box, you've got woodenware that's aged to the point where it's kind of a whiskey colored brown and the wax is a dark black. That answer is pretty much right there staring you in the face. But not all not all beginning beekeepers are going to know that. So, it's going to be something important to know, is that fairly new woodenware on the frames? Is that light yellow to a light tan wax, or is that wax just, super dark to the point where it's been recycled and reused now for, 5+ years? And, a good rule of thumb is to always, sort out and replace a couple of frames out of a hive, and so that, you don't have anything that's 5+ years, old and rolling over with the amount of potential pesticides that are laden and embedded into the wax.
Thank you. Well, Jim and Wanda Morford, who are also out there close to Jim Kelly, made a comment: when I talk to beekeepers, I tell folks to just watch as you walk around and see where you see bees on plants. And that's a sign to get more of those kinds of plants. They've done that for 20+ years, and they have lots of pollinator plants that produce pollen from spring to fall. Chad made a comment that he's added 2 supers per hive in 4 out of 10 yards, so he's getting his supers on. And Jessica Martell is asking about adding supers. She said, I was taught that the rule of thumb for adding is 7 frames full. It's time to add on, whether that's a super or another hive body. And I'll probably just add the comment that I learned that too, but that's when they're drawing out the frames. If they're already drawn out, you can just add those supers. Until we got small hive beetle, now we have to be a little bit more careful not to overdo it, but you can add a couple of supers on at least. And I haven't seen that many hive beetle problems yet so far, but I've seen a few hive beetles. Anybody else want to comment about adding supers? Drawn comb versus undrawn? Okay. Let's see.
Robert, there was a discussion on the Facebook page, a couple of different pages recently that I would love to pose here, and maybe we can get people to talk about it a little bit. And it was involving, again, one of these subjects that keeps popping up, top bar hives. And this person was, I'm starting bees this year. I really think I'm going to start in a top bar hive, and on and on and on. And I asked the question, why? But I didn't ever get an answer. And I would love it if the person was here to talk about that. Why would you choose a top bar hive? Now, there were some people that talked about long Langstroth hives because of not wanting to do lifting. And that makes some sense to me. And the long Langstroths use the Langstroth boxes, different configuration Langstroth frames, which is really important. But if there's anybody that would like to talk about that tonight, I just thought that was interesting, and that this person really couldn't give me a reason why they were choosing top bar hives.
Yeah. Well, anybody out there want to jump in that's into top bars?
I really won't say mean things to you, even though I might think them. So I'll try to be very politically correct.
Yeah, I've got it depends on your goals. My goal is for honey production, besides having fun keeping the bees. I've had a worry hive for 5 years, and it's been dead for 3, and I keep thinking I'm going to throw it on the burn pile, but I haven't done it yet. I may donate it at the fun day. Who knows?
Well, and I wondered if they really realized that they would probably only be producing comb honey then, that it's either crush and strain, and that the amount of honey that they produce is really significantly less. I don't know. Apparently the
Yeah.
person's not on here, even though it was the Northeast site, but we can talk about it another time.
Yeah,
It's just,
Back
this was
in-
kind of interesting.
Back in 2017, when I started looking for a beekeeping association and found your website. On your website at that point in time, you recommended that we not mess with top bar hives for a number of reasons. And one of the reasons was we really had nobody that could mentor other people in that method of beekeeping. Plus the fact you have a hard time extracting it. You know, there's a number of reasons not to. I don't think the bees, you know, the only advantage is you can pick up one frame at a time as opposed to a whole box. So if you have a problem lifting, you know, if you're in a wheelchair or something like that, that might be a reason to. But other than that, I have never found anything positive about top bar hives.
Well, that was kind of my thoughts too, Ed, but you know, other people, different ideas, and that's okay.
Thank you. Marsha Harmon sent me a few pictures that I have not been able to get on. And if Marsha's available, she had a question about something she saw. And I'm not sure if she's at her desktop and she can share her screen.
Robert, I tried and I uploaded it to the chat, I thought, but I don't think anybody can click on it to see it. So I don't think that as a member of the chat, I can add content. I think I have to be a host.
No, you don't. So down at the bottom of the screen, if in the center part where you see green, maybe it might be green. If you're at a desktop, you can just click share screen. I don't know if you're on your desktop or your
Hey,
phone.
no, I'm on my iPad. Let me see. Okay, so, but what's on my screen right now, my dear, is you. Let me see if I can go back to my photos. Let me look. I'll look while y'all carry on.
Okay. Jack Wilson, he says he has an orchard and was wondering if it would cause a problem to spray the trees. And I think Chad probably is the best person to answer that question.
Can you repeat the question? I was walking from one building to the other, and I didn't hear the question.
I have an orchard, and I was wondering if it would cause a problem to spray the trees.
Ultimately, any input you put into the environment where your bees are located could potentially adversely affect your bees. It may not. You always want to wait till the bloom cycle is finished. That way the bees aren't visiting that particular plant, that particular tree. So you're going to lessen the chance. You still want to spray first thing in the morning, early when there's low wind, or in the evening, close to dusk when the wind dies down. That way you have no potential for any factor of drift that could, move across a field and cover plants that are in bloom that the bees would visit, or even cover any equipment downwind that your bees might be in. So it's really important. And if you are going to spray, look for a contact product. There's something that has a longer residual value to it. So knowing and reading the label is very important, because there are times where we just have to spray, but in the best, most educated choice, long period of time.
I'm sorry, it cut out there for a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now it's cut out. You're in a bad spot, Chad.
Okay, now I'm just walking around outside because sometimes the reception.
Yeah. it's still cutting in and out. So, okay.
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
we
Well, I'm
got
gonna
some of
stop.
it.
And what was the last thing that you heard?
Just what you just said. What was the last thing that you heard?
Oh, so smart, Alec. So what I had mentioned was, try to educate yourself about the products and about the pests that you're trying to control, because every product has a different mode of action in which it controls a particular pest. So one, you want to make sure that it controls the pest to control. Two, you want to make sure it's a contact product versus something that would persist in the environment in which your bees are located for the shortest amount of time possible. Always spray in the early morning or later in the evening when your wind is at its lowest level. That way you don't have any potential problem with drift, because with drift, if it drifts across a field that has blooming pollinator friendly plants that your bees might be visiting, then you could be adversely affecting them inadvertently through a drift. Also, you just don't want to drift towards the direction of where your hives are located. And then always spray anything after the bloom rather than prior to the bloom or during the bloom cycle of a particular plant.
Great. Thank you. Those are good tips. And so Dwayne asked if most of your hives died, leaving sugar water in the combs, and I presume that it's also capped honey, and the remaining hives are full, what do you do? How much time before the moths or hive beetles start causing problems? Any experienced person out there want to take that question on?
Well, just in my experience with wax moth, it's all about the number of degree days. If the hives have been outside since they originally had bees in them, if the equipment had been moved indoors, then that changes the scenario completely. But if they're outside, normally the number of degree days adds up to the latter part of May to the first part of June, unless we've had an abnormally cool spring. But that's normally, in my experiences, when I start to see the early onset of the problem is, that first part of June, if not that really late part of May. So if you haven't been able to repopulate those hives with bees prior to that period of time, then you need to take those hives and freeze the frames for a minimum of 48 hours, and then store them in a manner that's going to be consistent with when you're going to use them. So if you're not going to use them for a while, I'd make sure to freeze the frames and then put them under moth crystals. If it's going to be multiple months, if you're talking just a couple of weeks, then I would just freeze them until you're ready to use them again.
Yeah, so Dwayne, you have about 2-3 weeks until the wax moths arrive, and they'll come up from the south. They don't, the hotter it gets, the more active they get until we start getting into the 40s in fall. And for the beetles, they will start getting out, causing problems here anytime later this month, if not already. So sometimes in April, they can be a problem too. So that's what my experience is. So Marcia, we're back to you.
I'm almost there. I've got
Okay.
my tech person working on it as we speak.
Okay.
We may be close.
We'll come back when you're ready. Just pop in.
Okay,
when you can.
I will.
Jill Nixon asked if the bees have backfilled and are moving the nectar up to the honey supers, wouldn't that be sugar syrup? And how does that affect honey? Jill, that must mean you're feeding. So nectar is is not sugar syrup, but sugar syrup if you're feeding is. And you don't want to do that. A lot of times they'll consume it. So don't feed them unless you need to. And Marcia, it looks like we got a picture.
Sorry for that abrupt entrance. I don't know what I'm doing.
So what's your situation? Looks like you got an open queen cell there.
I have an open queen cell, and that is my question. What is going on? We did a split Friday because I found 4 or 5 queen cells. And I went back in to look today because I was uncertain as to whether or not we moved the queen into the split because I couldn't find her. So I saw this today and I didn't know if this was the old queen offing the new queen or if this is the worker bees letting my new queen out.
So that's definitely a queen cell, and it looks like it's been capped. And so that it takes 8 days from egg to hatch out for that to happen. So that must have been started at least a week ago.
Mm-hmm. It did not look like that on Friday. It was completely capped. So it's being opened. Who's opening it?
I think when you took the frame out, you might have torn it open. It looks like it.
No.
Yeah.
Say it isn't so.
Anybody else? Jolie, what do you think?
That looks torn.
Oh.
Nikki says it's torn.
It is, and because the bees wouldn't really tear it right there necessarily.
Yeah.
So it was attached to the frame next door and it got cracked open.
Yep.
Well,
did you have your glasses on?
There are 4 more, so maybe I still am in luck.
Yeah. So if you've got 4 more, you're in luck.
Oh, jeez.
So honestly, you should not go in that hive for a couple of weeks until those queens have emerged and had a chance to mate. Because if you go in there and mess around,
this is what happens.
That's one of the things that happens. But if that queen had been emerging on that day, you have a greater risk of the bees not accepting her. So you just need to leave them alone.
Okay. Well, my worry
really
was
hard.
My worry was that I took the old queen into the split because we couldn't find her. So I was looking for eggs and that's what I found. But I found, like I said, there's 4 others that are capped and in perfectly good shape. They were swarm cells at the bottom. This was the only one that was up there on one of the frames. Bummer.
Well, the place to look for eggs is in your original hive.
Yeah, I should have done that. But this was less work.
Okay.
You sound like a beekeeper.
This was easier to get into than the other one. Okay, well, I shall leave them alone then for 2 weeks and see what happens with the other queen cells.
Welcome to beekeeping.
Thank you.
Jolie wanted to remind us to mention the auction for the fun day.
Yeah, so coming up is our fun day on Saturday, June 5th. And with that, we're having an online auction with Bidding Owl. And there's a bid sheet on the website, on the NECBA website. And honest, I only have a few items for the auction. The auction goes to our general fund, which supports all our educational programs. And the bid sheet's pretty specific on how the picture needs to be so I can get it on the website. And love to have beekeeping items. Plants go really well. Just whatever, everything. We did a small one to practice for Kansas honey producers, and man, it went really, really well. So anyway, we haven't had any fundraisers for over a year, and each scholarship student costs about $650. So it takes a lot of money, and we appreciate any donations that you guys can make towards the auction. So
There's a form. It's right below the calendar information on the homepage, and you can find the link there in the form.
or
for the
you could
bidding.
call or email or text me, and I'll send the form to you by email. So
Thank you. So the Morgans said they were responding and said, Becky, the answer might be as simple. This is about the top bar hive. It might be as simple as the internet recommends it. I just typed in YouTube, best kind of beehive, and the top bar was the first video that popped up. Bad YouTube. Barbara Toller said, spray the orchard with what? I think that was Dwayne that was asking that question. So just in general, Chad gave us some tips, and Becky made a comment. Wow, talk about bad information on the internet.
but you know, we have to be really careful about shaming other types of
Yeah,
bee equipment, and honestly, I've had a lot of feedback from people that they don't want to have anything to do with this club because we kind of get into that negativity for other types of beekeeping equipment. And
yeah. Well,
you
like, it all depends on your goals. Some people just want to have, pollinators in their yard, and that's all they want to do. They don't want honey, but, and some of us are in it for honey, and some are in it for different fun stuff. So there are different kinds of, you can keep bees in almost anything, but, the top bars, it's got to be removable frames, because that's what used to be the law. For diseases and American foul brood and that kind of thing when that was really prevalent. But there's all kinds of ways to enjoy bees. Let's see. Lorick said, I released my queen into the hive last Monday. I checked the hive and did not see any eggs. Should I be concerned? And so Monday to Monday is a week. And I presume this was a package, or came some other way. Hopefully it didn't come as a nuke, but it could have. Never heard of that before. So, but it's been a week. She should have a few days to start her egg laying. So that's 7 days. You might give it a few more days and look for larvae and milky white worker jelly. I would start to be concerned if you didn't see anything in another week.
Apparently it's my night to be negative. So I'm going to go ahead and ask this question too. Can you see eggs usually? Do you know what eggs look like? Because I think we've got a lot of people that maybe this is the first time they've seen them. And I tell you what, they're hard to see. So seeing eggs might be, do you have really good light? Do you need to take a picture of the frame and enlarge it with your phone or something so that you can make sure that you're seeing that? But you're generally looking for, yeah, milky, a little bit of royal jelly in the bottom, shiny looking stuff. But I tell you what, they're hard to see, but there's probably nothing more important in beekeeping than being able to see eggs. So
yeah, do whatever you can to increase your visibility and trying to find those. And mostly it's looking for the royal jelly, the worker jelly, the pool of white jelly that the larvae are feeding on. That will help you find those. And don't pick a day like today when it's mostly cloudy, but do it on a sunny day. I don't know what other tips anybody else might want to add. Looking for eggs and larvae. Marcia, any tips from you?
Take a picture.
Yes. And she stated that there. She took it. She has better luck taking a photo and looking at the photo to see the eggs. She says she can never see them with her own eyes. So that's a good suggestion. Excellent. And then Deborah Butler is on. Deborah's asking, once your drawn brood frames have been stored under moth crystals, how and for how long do you air them out before putting them with the bees? How do they air out without exposing them to the bees and pests? That's a good question. So one is read the directions. If they're not on there, it usually may take several days, but make sure that the crystals that you have used are, the active ingredient is para-dichlorobenzene. If it's another type, if it doesn't say para-dichlorobenzene, I'd be really concerned that it's not the right type of moth crystals, and you could be poisoning any bees that you put those in. Anybody else?
Robert, I would even add, besides airing them out, I would even take the individual frames out because sometimes those crystals can wedge themselves between the frames. They can fall into indentions. If you store your frames wet, they can stick to the wet wax. So I would go through and just visually look at each frame and take them out of the box after those couple of days of airing them out. That way you're not putting a foreign material into your box that, you know, the bees might not appreciate.
Thank you, Chad. Anybody else?
Robert, I've got one for you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Came in late as a anonymous email. So what do you do if you want just a couple of hives in the backyard? You know, then you're successful, and next year you got 4 hives, and then you're successful, and then you got 8 hives. And now this year it's early May, and you've got 21 hives.
Wow.
What do you do? You know, help. I'm thinking about selling out and raising rabbits.
Hey, what's the difference?
You know, and this email was signed by BEE, Befuddled Elementary Entomologist. So any suggestions? How do you keep your bees from expanding?
Yeah, good question.
You get your friends involved and you sell them brood in the spring. I mean, really, you can sell it brood to other beekeepers. You make some nukes and sell them. Or you find an out yard and you put your bees out there instead of having them in your backyard. I mean, you just need to decide what your goal is. But if you don't want more than 5 hives, you need to do something with your brood, or they'll all be hanging in the tree. They'll be hanging in the trees. So
Yeah, call some of your friends in the bee club and tell them you've got a swarm, come get it or something. You know, we're not all successful all the time, and so you may have somebody that's lost a few hives, and you can, you know, help them out and get them restarted. Those are a few suggestions.
Yeah, obviously I was kind of joking, but it's been one
Yeah.
of those springs, you know. But even some swarm hives, bait hives in the trees. I'm bringing in bees, and I've got swarms, and I'm splitting, and like, oh, here we go.
So yeah, well, and you know, I know you've got a place that you can take them out to the country now, so that may help. We are at the top of the hour. We'll keep going for a few more minutes, but got a question from Jim Cormode. Said, how do you calm an aggressive hive? Anybody is? I don't think Cheryl Burkhead's online at the moment. She's probably out in the bee yard, but she's got some that she's going to be trying to tame. Becky, what do you do if you have any aggressive hives? She might be off at the moment. How about, sorry, let's see. Cecil, what does Cecil do for aggressive hives?
I
There.
would
Probably have to look-
requeen that hive.
Requeen. That's what I would do. Okay. So, and that's what Susan Lane suggested also was requeening. Been there, done that. And I think that's about all that I can, all the questions we've got. So,
You know, Robert, one thing I would add about an aggressive hive is I would first ask, you know, are you getting in on a cloudy, overcast day? Or are you, you know, what time of the year are you getting in? And then also, are you using your smoker to help mask the alarm pheromones so that, you know, they'll be a little more calm when you're working through the hive? So, you know, checking those things first before requeening and asking those simple questions might help to, you know, save you $40 if the individual isn't following those particular practices.
yeah, well,
Robert, Bob?
Also, it's getting ready to swarm will sometimes be real nasty.
and you know, working your bees in adverse weather, sometimes they can have bad days. Maybe their temperament isn't really the problem. It's just not the opportune time and the temperature of the day. Obviously, you know, mid 60s is and warmer is the better time to be inspecting, not in the 50s or 40s. So there are various factors. You could probably elaborate more if you want to, Jim.
Yes, I was working in a hive this afternoon. I went in about 4:30. It's about 3 hours after the rain stopped here. A month ago, that hive was starting to get aggressive, but they were really aggressive. A lot of drones in the hive, a lot of drone brood. Only one frame with good brood pattern. The other 8 frames with brood pattern were irregular. So I'm kind of concerned. What's happening?
Yeah, sometimes it can be the genetics. Sometimes it could be just bad weather for that day. You know, your situation might be that perhaps the hive is actually queenless and has been for a little while, and that could piss them off, make them mad. So there are different scenarios. And sometimes your more aggressive defensive hives, or what we call them, you know, are the ones that make the most honey too. So was it just that one day?
They were aggressive a month ago today and aggressive today. I wasn't in there because of the cold weather in between then.
Yeah, and so requeening might be your next step, and if you can do it now, you know, depends on how much your population is, or if you can wait. And it's easier to do it in the spring than it is in the fall or late summer. So you might want to consider changing queens. Changing queens is changing your genetics.
Okay, thank you.
Susan also wanted to add that perhaps it might also be a skunk or another animal that might be bothering the hive, and that might be making them a lot more defensive. So that's another tip. Okay. Well, great. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us tonight. If there's anything else we can do, just let us know. Our monthly meeting for the month of May is on the 17th. So that's 2 weeks from tonight. And then we'll have our Northeastern Kansas Bee Fun Day on June 5th, another Q&A session on June 7th, and our monthly meeting will be June 21st. And perhaps, I believe our July meeting may be actually at the fairgrounds, and we may try to have it as both Zoom and in person. So stay tuned. We'll see what we can get worked out. So I believe that's it for the rest of the evening. Glad you could join us.